Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a vast, dense library of sources, research notes, and historical context and distill it all down to the pure, highly potent knowledge extract that gives you the critical edge.
Today, we're undertaking a truly dark and complex journey. We are strapping in for a deep dive into one of the wizarding world's most infamous and, I think, structurally critical families.
Yeah.
The noble and most ancient House of Black.
A lineage that is just dripping in immense wealth, ancient dark magic, and a profoundly dangerous obsession with blood purity.
It's a multi-generational obsession, really.
And while the Black family tree is massive, it's so complicated. You've got disowned rebels, dark wizards everywhere. Our focus today is tight. We are zeroing in on the modern generation of Black.
The three sisters.
Exactly. The three sisters who were raised on the exact same poisonous heritage, but ultimately embodied three completely different responses to that. We're talking about Bellatrix Lestrange, Narcissa Malfoy, and Andromeda Tonks.
And our mission, I think, based on the sources you've shared, is to really dissect a profound paradox.
Go on.
You have three women born into the same cradle of privilege and prejudice, yet their paths diverge so sharply. I mean, one becomes the architect of absolute, unwavering fanaticism.
That's Bellatrix.
The second finds strategic loyalty, but it's driven purely by maternal instinct.
Narcissa.
And the third executes an outright and very costly moral rebellion.
Andromeda. And their collective choices define the war, really. They ended up placing their own children, Tonks and Draco, on completely opposing battle lines.
It's the ultimate high-stakes family drama.
It really is. How does a shared foundation produce such wildly different outcomes? Okay, let's unpack this deep and, frankly, terrifying lineage, starting right at the very beginning. The shared starting.
We have to begin with the parents, the patriarch and matriarch, Cygnus Black III, Druella Rosier.
And just hearing those names, Rosier especially, it signals not just aristocracy, but something dark.
It absolutely does. These are lineages that were politically and magically aligned with the darkest forces of the era. They married around the mid-1950s and pretty quickly had their three daughters.
Bellatrix, the oldest, she arrived around 1951.
Then came Andromeda, the middle child. And finally, Narcissa, the youngest, who was born around 1955.
And these girls weren't just born into wealth, were they? They were born into an ideology.
That's the perfect way to put it. The sources make it abundantly clear that both Cygnus and Druella hailed from families with strong historical ties to Voldemort and the Death Eaters.
So this wasn't just some vague inherited bigotry. This was an active political stance.
It was. The sources really emphasized that the girls were raised in this immense privilege, which was inextricably linked to this intense indoctrination. They were taught, as an absolute truth, the superiority of purebloods.
Which naturally made them deeply prejudiced against non-purebloods from, the moment they could speak.
Pretty much. The distinction you made that the wealth and the ideology were one and the same is so critical. The sources paint this picture of an environment where prejudice wasn't just tolerated, it was the currency of the household.
It wasn't enough to simply have old money?
No. You had to actively despise those who didn't. You had to perform your purity.
And to really understand that psychological environment, you have to look back even further, right, at the history of the Black family itself.
You do. Think of someone like Phidias Nigellus Black, the former Hogwarts headmaster.
His portrait still hangs in the headmaster's office.
Exactly. And the sources describe him as being this utterly failing educator because he valued his prejudice more than his own son. The family was built on this twisted premise that ideology trumped even basic kinship.
Wow.
That is the soil these three sisters grew up in.
It really sets the stage for the enormous sacrifice Andromeda would later have to make. Now, before we move on, there's a fascinating physical detail about Narcissa noted in the sources.
Ah, yes. She was the outlier.
She really was. While Bellatrix and Andromeda were dark-haired and apparently looked shockingly similar to one another, Narcissa had fair skin and the striking blonde.
That aesthetic contrast is noted, and it's compelling, isn't it? We often associate darkness with the Black family name, both physically and magically.
Of course, Black.
Yet, Narcissa possesses this physical light, and given her very complex path walking right up to the line of darkness before stepping back, it feels almost symbolic of her inner conflict.
That's a great point. So they grow up in this environment, and then it's time for their education. The question of where they would be sorted at Hogwarts was, never really in doubt.
Absolutely not. All three sisters were sorted into Slytherin House.
No surprise there.
For Bellatrix, you can just imagine the sorting hat merely confirmed what was already an established, deeply held belief system. Slytherin didn't just accept her, it validated her parents' entire worldview.
And we really can't overstate the significance of that sorting, can we? It wasn't just a house. It was like a finishing school for the political and magical elite they were expected to join.
100%. Bellatrix, being the oldest, she quickly found her social circle among fellow purebloods who were already destined to become the next generation of Death Eaters.
This wasn't some kind of counterculture for them.
No, this was the establishment. This is the very core of their expected societal role.
And this environment, this is where the first fissures between the sisters started to appear.
It is. Because while they all shared a house, the sources indicate that Andromeda started to move away. So she began dating Ted Tonks.
A Muggle-born.
A Muggle-born Hufflepuff.
Yeah.
The exact opposite of what was expected of her. And this shift, even in their early Hogwarts years, meant that Narcissa, the youngest, she gravitated even harder toward Bellatrix.
Towards the oldest and most ideologically correct.
Right. And they became incredibly close. They had those classic childhood nicknames. Bellatrix called Narcissa Sissy, and Narcissa called Bellatrix Bella.
You know, think about the intimacy those names suggest. That was a real emotional, a true sibling connect formed before the full weight of the pureblood dogma completely cracked.
It makes their future estrangement so much more poignant.
It really does. It wasn't just a political disagreement. It was the severing of an intimate tie forged in childhood.
And that tie was ultimately judged against the family's highest law, what the sources call the pureblood mandate.
The mandate on marriage.
Marriage is tradition as a transaction.
And that mandate is chilling. The sources do not pull any punches about the consequences of upholding. The Black family's philosophy strongly dictated that marriage was not about affection. It was about protecting the purity of the blood.
And the steps they took to ensure that were, well, extreme. To the point of inbreeding. The notes explicitly mention that Sirius Black's parent, Walburga and Orion, were second cousins.
Which underscores the horrifying extent of this commitment to purity.
It's the logical, horrifying conclusion of their twisted ideology, isn't it? I mean, when your definition of a worthy partner shrinks down to only a handful of families who share your specific beliefs and lineage,
you're forced to marry within that extremely limited circle.
It's genetic inbreeding as a function of magical bigotry. It was all designed to maintain control and wealth, and the sources really highlight how each sister responded to this pressure.
Let's start with Bellatrix, the eventual zealot. She was the most obedient to the rule, but weirdly the least emotionally invested in her own marriage.
Exactly. Bellatrix married Rodolphus Lestrange, a pureblood from another Sacred 28 family. But the sources are definitive. This was a marriage of obligation only.
A pure transaction.
Purely to fulfill tradition. We see in her entire history that she showed Rodolphus zero affection. She never mentioned him in conversation, never relied on him, and crucially,
never had a child with him.
Never. Her devotion was entirely monopolized by Voldemort. Her physical life, her magical life, it was all dedicated to the Dark Lord. Her marital life was just a facade to satisfy her parent.
A completely cold, calculated move. Narcissa, on the other hand, she managed to navigate the mandate while still finding affection.
Which is what separates her approach from Bellatrix's cold obedience.
So who did she marry?
Narcissa married Lucius Malfoy, another pureblood from an equally wealthy, if not wealthier family, who she met during their time at Hogwarts.
Okay, so this was a school romance.
It seems so. The sources confirm that their marriage stemmed from genuine mutual affection, and it fulfilled her father's wish. This was a strategic move that benefited the family, connecting the immensely powerful Black and Malfoy pure bloodlines.
So she got it all. The life of unimaginable luxury at Malfoy Manor, her social standing secured.
She achieved the mandate and emotional security simultaneously. She played the game perfect.
So we have Bellatrix sacrificing emotion entirely to ideology, Narcissa successfully balancing affection and strategy within the ideology. And now we move to Andromeda.
The one who chose to sacrifice her place in the family for her own moral principles.
This is the moment where that shared starting line is just completely...
It is. Andromeda made a choice that was, according to the Black family dogma, the ultimate unforgivable sin. She married a Muggle-born man, Ted Tonks.
And the family's reaction was not subtle.
Not at all. It was total and immediate destruction. She was instantly disowned and shunned by every single member of her family.
And we have a chilling quote from Narcissa on this later in the series.
We do. She confirms the severity of the rift. She says, "We, Bellatrix and I, have never set eyes on our sister since she married the mudblood."
Using that slur, it just shows how deep the poison went.
And we know this estrangement wasn't just verbal. It was a physical act. The sources note that Andromeda's name was physically incinerated from the Black family tree tapestry.
The one hanging in 12 Grimald plate, a permanent, visible, magical record of her betrayal.
This literal act of burning her name off the family record placed her in the same category as the ultimate traitor, Sirius Black.
We have to emphasize the profound cost.
Oh, absolutely. Andromeda didn't just lose her family. She gave up her entire social standing, her access to the immense Black family wealth, and the protection of that pureblood network. She refused to participate in Voldemort's cause.
She chose to raise her daughter, Nymphadora, in a household with far less material wealth, but crucially,
with far better morals and ideals. This single act cemented her on the side of moral clarity and light.
And you contrast that with her sisters, who just doubled down. Bellatrix formally joins the death, devoting her life to the cause.
While Narcissa, though she never officially received the Dark Mark, became a profound and unyielding supporter of her husband Lucius, and tacitly supported the crimes committed by her sister and the Dark Lord.
Both sisters chose dark power and the prestige of their lineage over kinship.
Which brings us back to Bellatrix, because her loyalty wasn't just ideological, it was pathological.
It really was. Her true affection and devotion were directed solely at one person.
Voldemort.
It's a terrifying exploration of how devotion can become weaponized. We have direct confirmation from the creator, J.K. Rowling, that Bellatrix was madly and romantically in love with Voldemort to the point of obsession.
And that included sexual attraction. The sources describe her behavior around him as almost worshipful. When she was near him, one source notes she would lean toward him, for mere words could not demonstrate her longing for closeness.
Seeking physical proximity even as he, recoiled from any real intimacy.
This intensity earned her a unique kind of trust, though. Even from someone as wary as Voldemort, Bellatrix was trained directly by the Dark Lord himself.
That training was comprehensive, wasn't it? She became an incredibly skilled duelist, but more important,
She mastered occlum,
the magical art of closing one's mind against mind.
a very difficult skill, and that's a critical detail. Voldemort trusted her so completely that he invested his own time in her magical education, teaching her the very defense he himself used to shield his deepest thought.
That speaks volumes about her fanatical loyalty. He knew her mind would never be turned against him.
So he didn't need to keep her out. He taught her how to channel that inherent, almost psychotic madness into devastating, focused power. And this trust extended to tangible things.
The Horcrux.
He entrusted her with guarding one of his most precious secrets, a Horcrux, specifically Hufflepuff's cup, placing it deep within the Lestrange family vault at Gringotts.
She didn't know its true nature, of course.
No, but she knew it was valuable to him, and her devotion ensured its safety.
So Bellatrix is the fanatic, the martyr, and Narcissa, meanwhile, is the strategic survivor.
Yes, she and Lucius settled into Malfoy Manor, a place just dripping in wealth and historical significance, where they enjoyed a truly luxurious life based on their high societal.
And for Narcissa, the focus became intensely maternal.
Especially with the birth of Draco Malfoy in 1980. The sources are very clear on that. Draco was deeply loved and spoiled by his mother. She doted on him completely.
While Lucius, at the same time, was ensuring the boy was thoroughly indoctrinated.
Right. Preaching the absolute importance of blood purity, status, and privilege.
It's a real gilded cage scenario. Draco was raised to be arrogant, spoiled, and prejudiced, but underneath all that ideology, he was fundamentally protected and loved by his mother.
And that protective instinct became necessary almost immediately, following the first fall of Voldemort in 1980.
This is where the difference between Narcissa's husband and Bellatrix's husband becomes so stark.
Absolutely. Bellatrix and the Lestrange family, they committed that unforgivable act of loyalty, the torture of the Longbottoms, and were sent to Azkaban. Lucius, however,
Lucius talked his way out of it. He used his immense influence, his wealth, and some clever legal maneuvering to claim innocence.
he claimed he was acting under the Imperious Curse, and he successfully avoided capture and imprisonment. It was a cowardly, strategic move that saved the Malfoy name from immediate public disgrace.
And crucially, it kept Narcissa and Draco in their comfortable life, maintaining their social high ground.
So while Bellatrix spent 14 years in prison maintaining her ideological purity, Narcissa spent those years ensuring her son lived a life of absolute privilege, instilling in him the arrogance that was the hallmark of the Malfoy and Black legacy.
That distinction, imprisonment versus evasion, really sets the stage for the ideological divergence of the second.
It does. But before we get there, we absolutely must pause and dedicate time to another member of this lineage who chose moral rebellion.
A man whose actions had, far-reaching, pivotal consequences for the eventual Voldemort.
We need to talk about Regulus Black.
R.A.B.
Regulus Arcturus Black,
Yeah.
Sirius Black's younger brother, born to Walburga and Orion, and his early life was the mirror image of everything Sirius rejected. While Sirius was the rebellious outcast, Regulus was.
The perfect son.
He really was. The sources confirm he fully embraced the family's pure blood obsession, a fact his parents delighted in. He was sorted into Slytherin, became a popular seeker on the Quidditch team.
And he was a member of the Slug Club, Horace Slughorn's elite club.
Yeah, he was handsome, gifted, and ideologically correct in the eyes of his family. His dedication to the cause was absolute. It culminated in him receiving the Dark Mark and officially becoming a Death Eater at the staggeringly young age of 6.
And his parents, the notes say, were overjoyed and deeply proud of their right little hero.
He was perfectly positioned to be Voldemort's loyal soldier.
So how did this right little hero become the very first person to truly strike at Voldemort's immortality?
It comes down to his specific background, the knowledge he had access to. Regulus wasn't just blindly loyal. He was intensely intelligent.
And his upbringing within the Black family meant he had access to a vast private library
Filled with centuries of dark magic texts and histories, knowledge that even the most determined Hogwarts student would never encounter.
That context is so crucial. Because of that unique exposure, when Voldemort spoke, Regulus was listening with a depth of understanding others.
And Voldemort was notorious for his profound arrogance, constantly boasting about his power and his eternal life. The sources, specifically J.K. Rowling's reflection, note that he would often drop oblique hints about his Horcrux to his most trusted follower.
And while others probably took that boast metaphorically.
Right, thinking he meant he'd achieved a great magical legacy. But Regulus, thanks to his dark arts knowledge, realized Voldemort was speaking literally. He recognized the boast about conquering death as a specific reference to a piece of soul being hidden away.
He had the chilling realization that Voldemort had gone down the path of the darkest magic imaginable, splitting his soul multiple times.
But the realization itself wasn't enough to make him betray the Dark Lord. The motivation had to be deeply personal.
Which brings us to Kreacher.
The true catalyst for his profound moral reversal centered entirely on the mistreatment of the Black family house elf, Kreacher. Voldemort needed a disposable creature to test the terrifying defenses surrounding Salazar Slytherin's locket Horcrux.
The one in the secret sea cave.
Exactly. So he asked Regulus to borrow Kreacher.
And Kreacher's tale is genuinely harrowing. It just speaks volumes about...
Voldemort forced the elf to use his own blood for the sacrifice to gain entry. Kreacher then had to row the small boat to the cavern, where Voldemort commanded him to drink the excruciating poison in the stone basin to access the locket.
After Kreacher drank the poison, Voldemort took the locket, refilled the basin, and just abandoned him.
Abandoned him to die a miserable death, laughing at the house elf's weak. But Voldemort's fatal flaw, his arrogance, meant he failed to consider the unique magic possessed by house elves.
They can disapparate from places that block wizard apparitions.
And Kreacher, in immense pain and terror, managed to disapparate out of the cave and return home.
And the fact that Voldemort saw the elf as entirely expendable, leaving him to be dragged under the lake by the Inferi, that triggered something massive.
It did. The sources suggest Regulus had a strong, genuine bond with Kreacher and had always been kind to him, which was a rarity in that household.
So he was enraged.
Incandescent with rage. This act of cruelty showed him Voldemort's true nature. The Dark Lord saw everyone, regardless of their pure blood status or magical abilities, as nothing more than disposable tools.
The ideology Regulus had sworn his life to was exposed as hollow and cruel.
And that realization galvanized Regulus into a plan that was as brilliant as it was suicidal. He immediately understood that the locket must be a Horcrux, and he decided to strike back at Voldemort through it, knowing full well he would die in the process.
He didn't rush. He prepared a meticulous substitution. He created a fake locket, identical in appearance.
And he wrote that famous defiant note.
That note is the emotional center of the story. It reads, "To the Dark Lord, I have stolen the real Horcrux and intend to destroy it as soon as I can. I face death in the hope that when you meet your match, you will be mortal once."
It's a profound declaration of war against the man he once idolized.
So he returned to the cave.
Knowing the pain Kreacher endured, Regulus forced himself to drink the excruciating poison, emptying the basin himself to retrieve the real locket. And in his final moments, racked with pain, he ordered Kreacher to switch the lockets.
And crucially commanded the elf to leave without him and never tell anyone what had happened.
Regulus was dragged to his death by the Inferi into the Dark Lake, ensuring not only that the Horcrux was safe, but that Voldemort would never realize his secret had been uncovered. He died a true hero, striking the first, most critical blow against the Dark Lord.
Yet he was perceived by many, including his own brother Sirius, as a coward who had simply run away from the death.
His story really proves that even the deepest, darkest lineage can produce the most radical form of moral clarity. He chose to die protecting a house elf and sabotaging a Dark Lord.
So the choices of the three Black sisters and this pivotal sacrifice of Regulus, they had these cascading effects on the next.
Absolutely. Which brings us to Nymphadora Tonks, Andromeda's daughter, born in 1973.
Tonks was raised entirely outside the suffocating ideology of the Black family.
Completely. She never officially met her Malfoy or Lestrange cousins due to Andromeda's disownment. She grew up in a home free of prejudice, and she was born a metamorph.
A highly unusual, innate magical ability that let her change her appearance at will.
A talent they recognized the moment her hair began shifting colors on her first day of life.
And though she hated her first name, Nymphadora, preferring to be called Tonks, she was known for two defining characteristics: her vibrant spirit and her total clumsy.
Often tripping or knocking things over. And in a final act of rejection of the Black family legacy, she was sorted into Hufflepuff.
Defying the Slytherin tradition that had gripped the family for generations.
And despite her noted clumsiness, She was exceptionally talented academically. She achieved high NEWT grades, which allowed her to pursue a highly competitive career.
As an Auror, she trained under the formidable Alastor Moody, who clearly saw her. Her metamorphomagus abilities made her invaluable for concealment.
Though the sources note she nearly failed the stealth and tracking section of her training because of that very clumsiness. It's a charming detail that reminds us she was human despite her power.
And when Voldemort returned, her status as a fully fledged Auror made her a critical asset to the Order of the...
She could operate both within the legitimate Ministry of Magic and as a spy for the Order. And it was through the Order that she formed a deep connection with her cousin, Sirius Black,
who proudly recalled that Andromeda had been his favorite cousin.
And this is where her moral trajectory shines bright. Tonks fell deeply in love with a fellow Order member, Remus Lupin, a werewolf.
And the sources detail the magical consequence, profound love, her Patronus.
It changed to a werewolf shape, reflecting her deep emotional connection to him. This dedication was revolutionary, considering the wizarding world's deep-seated prejudice against werewolves.
Lupin initially rejected her, though. He was tortured by his own feelings of inadequacy, addition, his poverty, age.
He was terrified of passing on the werewolf condition to a child, and the sources detail the immense psychological toll this took on Tonks. She fell into a deep depression, her appearance became drawn and ill.
She even struggled to control her metamorphomagus abilities because her happiness was so compromised.
But her love, the true theme of her mother's rejection of purity, ultimately prevailed. They married, defying all societal scorn.
A brief period of joy. She gave birth to Teddy Lupin, a metamorphomagus named after her father, the Muggle-born husband who was later tortured and killed by death while on the run.
The profound tragedy of the war meant that Tonks and Lupin were both killed during the final battle, a point we'll return to. But the legacy of Andromeda and Ted lived on. Andromeda became the proud grandmother and eventual guardian, raising Teddy with help from Harry Potter, his godfather.
It's the ultimate triumph over ideology. The sister who was disowned for marrying a Muggle-born ultimately raised the child of a Muggle-born and a werewolf, a living, breathing rejection of the blood purity cult that defined...
Now let's look at the other side.
Draco Malfoy. Narcissa. His trajectory shows the full, predictable weight of the pure blood expectations Narcissa accepted when she chose.
Draco grew up utterly spoiled, rich, and protected. He was raised by his father to value blood purity above all else. His goal was always to follow Lucius's path, idolizing his father's status as a close associate of the dark.
The cruelty and arrogance that defined him were instilled in him by his parents.
And this is a critical moment where we have to address the analysis provided in the source material, which explicitly corrects a popular fan narrative.
Right. The sources contain explicit confirmation from J.K. Rowling.
She refuted the popular fan theory that Draco was misunderstood, or secretly had a heart of gold buried under his prejudice. She firmly stated that he remains a person of dubious morality and that it was common sense to realize he was fundamentally a bad person who was never truly redeemed in the way Snape.
That context is vital for understanding Narcissa's eventual choice. Draco was not a victim, he was spoiled and raised to be a bully, and he fully embraced that.
His early years were marked by consistent malice. He was infamous for insulting Ron and Hermione, calling her a filthy little mudblood, the ultimate slur, and torturing Neville and Harry with regularity.
Even his placement on the Slytherin Quidditch team was based on pure privilege.
Lucius bought the entire Quidditch team Nimbus 2001, ensuring Draco secured the seeker spot.
So Draco represents the successful, privileged product of the Black family's core ideology. Spoiled, powerful, and utterly poisoned by prejudice. He is ready to step into the role of Death Eater, believing it's his destiny.
While his cousin Tonks is fighting for the Order. This sets the stage for the second, where the sisters' paths finally collide, and then finally, one last time, diverge.
We're jumping into the heart of the Second Wizarding War, where Bellatrix and Narcissa, despite their shared initial loyalty to Voldemort, begin to break apart under the strain of failure and
And Bellatrix's history during the first fall defines her second act. She, Rodolphus, Robaston Lestrange, and Barty Crouch Jr. became infamous for their desperate search for Voldemort after his initial death.
Their most notorious act, the one that showcased an unflinching devotion that crossed all lines of sanity, was torturing the Aurors Frank and Alice Longbottom, permanent insanity.
She was a zealot, a true believer, and she didn't hide it. During her trial, Bellatrix proudly claimed loyalty to Voldemort, sitting in the court chair as though it were a throne.
And she was sentenced to life in Azkaban, but she waited 14 years, confident in her prophet. The Dark Lord will rise again. He will reward us beyond any of his other followers. We alone.
And Voldemort rewarded that patience, organizing a mass breakout that freed Bellatrix and the others. The sources describe her appearance post-Azkaban. Her face was hollowed and skull-like, but it was alive with a feverish, fanatical glow.
Imprisonment had only intensified her absolute, unhinged devotion. She was, in every sense, a magical martyr to the cause.
And this devotion brought her directly into conflict with her own blood during the pivotal Department of Mysteries,
where Narcissa played a dangerous, indirect role in setting up that disaster.
Yes, Narcissa's actions here show a glimpse of the strategic darkness she was capable of. She used the Black family house elf, Creature, who was now serving the Order at Grimmauld Place, to manipulate information,
She was able to extract the fact that Harry Potter was Sirius's most important concern,
which Voldemort then used to lure Harry to the Ministry, setting the whole battle in motion.
So that night, the fanatic and the strategic supporter were both present, and the family ties violently collided.
Bellatrix fought her niece, Tonks, for the first time, badly injuring her. Then, in an act of pure ideological spite, she dueled and killed her cousin, Sirius Black, sending him through the veil.
And as if that wasn't enough,
Bellatrix then tortured Neville Longbottom with the Cruciatus Curse, reveling in referencing his parents' terrible fate. When the battle was lost, Bellatrix was the only Death Eater to escape capture that night,
saved by Voldemort himself after the prophecy was destroyed.
But Lucius was captured and imprisoned, finally having the Malfoy name publicly tarnished for all to see.
And Lucius's capture meant the Malfoy family lost their status in safety. Voldemort's rage over the prophecy failure was directed at Lucius, but the punishment was leveled at his son.
Voldemort gave Draco the impossible task of killing Albus Dumbledore, effectively forcing Draco to become an official Death Eater and receive the Dark Mark.
A psychological move designed to humiliate the Malfoys and test Draco's loyalty. A task Voldemort knew Draco would almost certainly fail.
And Narcissa, who loved Draco unconditionally, saw this assignment for what it was, a suicide mission. The sources detail her sheer desperation. Ignoring Voldemort's strict orders not to speak of the mission, she sought out Severus Snape for help.
Bringing Bellatrix along as a deeply suspicious chaperone.
And that confrontation is fascinating because it forces a split between the sisters. Bellatrix, the zealot, was solely focused on protecting Voldemort's honor. She questioned Snape's loyalty relentlessly.
But Narcissa was past ideology. She was crying, telling Snape there was nothing I wouldn't do anymore for her son, showing her willingness to abandon all political and social norms for Draco's survival.
She even snapped at Bellatrix, "Don't you dare blame my husband," prioritizing her immediate family's honor over the cause.
This is the moment she crosses the line. Recognizing that Voldemort didn't care if her son lived or died, Narcissa begged to protect Draco.
And crucially, the sources confirm it was Narcissa, not Bellatrix, who pushed Snape to make the unbreakable vow.
Let's just pause on the gravity of that. The unbreakable vow is an act of extreme magical commitment. The penalty for breaking it is instant death.
By asking Snape to take this vow, Narcissa was forcing him to commit absolutely, under the pain of death, to three things: to assist Draco, to protect him, and to finish the job if Draco could not.
The risk she asked Snape to take underscores her desperation. She was leveraging the deepest, darkest magic, the magic that demands death for failure, to protect her son from the consequences of the dark in her husband.
And Snape agreed, shocking Bellatrix, who could not comprehend such a profound sacrifice for love, especially when it challenged the Dark Lord's direct orders.
But even with the vow, the Malfoys' humiliation, Lucius was eventually freed from Azkaban, but they were forced to endure the
allowing Malfoy Manor to serve as Voldemort's operational headquarters, essentially turning their home into a prison and a headquarters for the man who had ruined their status.
Voldemort openly mocked them. At a Death Eater meeting, he deliberately mentioned Andromeda marrying a mudblood and Tonks marrying the werewolf Remus Lupin, delighting in their visible humiliation.
Bellatrix, desperate to regain favor, was noted to be in tears as she fiercely denied that Tonks was her niece. And, adding further insult, Voldemort took Lucius's wand, leaving him defenseless.
Their priority became pure survival. During the Malfoy Manor skirmish, when Harry and friends were captured, Narcissa again showed her maternal priority.
After Draco's wand was stolen by Harry, Narcissa gave Draco her own wand, leaving both herself and Lucius effectively wandless for the Battle of Hogwarts. She was willing to sacrifice her own defense entirely for Draco's ability to defend himself.
And that leads directly to the moment that saved the Malfoy family and sealed Voldemort's.
Narcissa's defining act of betrayal during the Battle of Hogwarts.
After Voldemort cast the killing curse on Harry in the Forbidden Forest, he commanded someone to check if the boy was dead. It's so critical that Narcissa, the protective mother, stepped forward.
She didn't do it out of loyalty to the Dark Lord. She did it because she saw the one opportunity she might ever get to find out the fate of her son, who was inside Hogwarts.
She checked Harry, found that he was miraculously alive, and whispered the question that sealed the outcome of the war, a question that was intensely personal and utterly non-ideological.
Is Draco alive?
Upon Harry's confirmation, Narcissa made the strategic, life-risking decision to lie to the most powerful dark wizard in history, proclaiming Harry dead.
We need to dissect the sheer weight of this choice. Narcissa's analysis of the situation was cold, precise, and entirely logical for a mother. She knew that the only way she would be permitted to enter Hogwarts to find and protect her son was as part of the conquering army.
The lie was her ticket inside.
And this act of betrayal, driven purely by maternal love, is the ultimate thematic irony. The sources note that this motive, unconditional love for a child, was incomprehensible to Voldemort.
Because he could not fathom the depth of her love for Draco, he could not successfully read her thought, a failure similar to the allegiance Snape maintained due to his love.
Her love became a magical shield, allowing her to betray him and secure her family's survival.
After Narcissa's betrayal, the battle raged on. But Bellatrix remained fierce. She was the last Death Eater standing beside Voldemort after Narcissa and the Malfoys departed the forest.
Fulfilling her self-appointed role as a zealous martyr, she pushed toward the center of the conflict, demonstrating devastating power. She nearly killed Ginny Weasley,
a fact that triggered the iconic confrontation with Ginny's mother, Molly.
Their duel was furious and primal. Molly, driven by a protective fury that mirrored Narcissa's own motivation, screaming, "Not my daughter, you bitch."
Bellatrix, ever the sadist, tried to distract Molly by mocking the death of her son, Fred.
But Molly was too driven. She was protecting her remaining children. Molly, channeling a powerful, defining love, killed Bellatrix with a killing curse aimed square in the chest directly over her heart.
Her gloating smile froze, and she toppled, leading Voldemort to scream in pure rage at the loss of his most faithful lieutenant.
Bellatrix lived and died as a zealous martyr, defined by her fanatical loyalty to an ideology.
Narcissa, meanwhile, had successfully secured her family's future through her betrayal. She, Lucius, and Draco reunited in the Great Hall, staying huddled together, uncomfortable, and looking profoundly marked by the experience, but safe.
And because of Narcissa's pivotal lie to Voldemort, which allowed Harry to re-enter the castle and continue the fight, the entire Malfoy family was ultimately granted immunity and forgiven for their crime.
They lost social standing, but not their freedom or their lives.
Her trajectory is fast. While she fully embraced the dark path initially, the sources suggest her maternal love ultimately provided a light in her heart, much like Andromeda's earlier moral clarity. She managed to hold on to the privilege of the Black family line while rejecting the core tenet of its fanaticism.
And she eventually became a grandmother to Scorpius Malfoy, whom she loved dearly, continuing her dedication to her immediate family line.
And finally, Andromeda Tonks, the sister who made the moral choice decades earlier, still paid an immense price for the war.
Both Andromeda and Ted Tonks were tortured by Death Eater, but refused to give up any information about Harry. Ultimately, Ted Tonks was killed while on the run, a direct casualty of the Death Eater's persecution of Muggles.
The very thing Andromeda was disowned for defying.
And the grief deepened during the Battle of Hogwarts. She suffered the ultimate loss. Her daughter, Nymphadora Tonks,
a horrific twist of fate, killed by her own fanatical sister, Bellatrix Lestrange. Her son-in-law, Remus Lupin, was also killed.
The sister who chose love and morality was ultimately devastated by the fanatical sister's violence, but not
No. Despite this profound, crushing grief, Andromeda took on the responsibility of raising her orphaned grandson, Teddy Lupin, alongside his godfather, Harry Potter.
She ensured he was raised with the better morals and ideals that she and Ted had established, rather than the poisonous prejudice she had abandoned decades before. It's a quiet, defiant legacy of the House of Black.
Which brings us to the end of this incredibly complex deep dive. We started with the noble and most ancient House of Black, a family defined by the poisonous ideology of pure-blood superiority, and we saw how it splintered into three radically different yet defining choices.
We saw Bellatrix choose absolute, unrepentant fanaticism, leading to her violent death. We saw Andromeda choose moral principles, leading to disownment, but producing a heroic legacy daughter. And we saw Narcissa choose a dark, privileged path, only to find redemption and survival, sheer strategic maternal instinct.
The primary insight here, drawn from all the sources, is that the Black family saga proves that the strongest, most complex magic isn't found in spells or blood. It's found in the power and depth of loyalty and love.
Bellatrix's fanatical loyalty to Voldemort defined her life and her death.
But Narcissa's fierce love for Draco and Andromeda's unwavering love for Ted and Nymphadora ultimately provided the necessary power to defy that deepest-seated, multi-generational toxic belief system.
It's the ultimate contrast. One sister's devotion to an ideology drove her to madness and murder, while the other sister's devotion to her child drove her to lie to the most powerful dark wizard, saving her family and, incidentally, ensuring the Dark Lord's demise.
This raises an important question for you, the listener. to mull over long after this deep dive is complete. Narcissa risked instant death for her son. If the Black sisters' lives are a cautionary tale about the pitfalls of purity obsession, what is the greatest non-magical power? That fundamental, simple human motive that Voldemort could never comprehend, that successfully defies a deeply entrenched, multi-generational system of belief.
The answer, repeated across Andromeda, Regulus, and Narcissa's story, seems to be the simplest one: family love.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the dark and dueling lineage of the Black family. Continue exploring those fascinating histories, and we'll catch you next time.